Last week we saw an unusual and significant event of which the political and economic ramifications won't be known for a number of years. However, in today's video we wanted to outline a number of key points that will hopefully assist expats in dealing with this and making informed decisions going forward. What are the political ramifications? Well, there is no real precedent on a country leaving the EU. However, there are a number of templates that may be adopted by the UK in how they work with and deal with the EU going forward. We've seen this with both Norway and Switzerland, and we'll be watching this case closely. What are the economic ramifications? Well, we know this is a political event and not a liquidity event. Sure, there will be market volatility and a lot of indecision amongst investors in terms of what are the fallout's going to be of the UK leaving the EU. However, we can't draw any strong comparisons to liquidity events like when Lehman Brothers collapsed during the GFC, because in that case their markets and liquidity stopped overnight. In this case, both the England and European central banks have confirmed that they're ready to step in and inject liquidity in the market to ensure an orderly and fashionable market. How does this affect the Australian economy? According to the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade's 2015 report, exports to the UK amounted for only 2.8% of Australia's total exports, and exports to the Eurozone, including the UK, amounted to only 7.4%. So economically speaking, it's not a massive event for Australian exports. However, obviously there will be other ramifications, including free trade agreements with the UK and the EU, which will have to be renegotiated. What are the biggest risks for Australian expats? I think we see two risks for Australian expats. The first is currency risk, and the second one is domicile risk. With currency risk, we've talked about many a time before in both our videos and also to our publications that one of the biggest risks for Australian expats is actually currency risk. Like we saw in previous years when the Swiss central bank depegged the Swiss franc against the euro, in this case today we've seen the pound fall over 8% against both the Australian dollar and the United States dollar. If you're an Australian expat overseas and you're holding assets inside pound sterling, then you may need to revisit your investment strategy, because the uncertainty going forward, certainly for the next 2 to 4 years, does not provide any clarity of where the pound's going to be. Now put yourself in the shoes of an Australian expat who's about to move from the UK to, say, America or back to Australia, and they've held off doing the currency transfer until the last possible moment. Now suddenly their pounds that they're about to transfer is worth 8% less, which may not sound like a lot, but if you've been doing the right thing by putting money aside for retirement, it can amount to a sizable amount. We often talk to investors and clients about dollar cost averaging, and this is a great case where this should be employed. If you are planning on moving or have previously planned on moving countries and also currencies, by moving money over time using the advantage of dollar cost averaging, what you find is you won't be exposed to the sharp peaks and troughs of the currency market. At the end of the day, no one knows what the currency is going to do. The case in point is George Soros, the famous hedge fund trader. He was actually long the pound before the Brexit vote, and obviously he got it wrong as well. So no one gets this right all the time. The best thing to do is use time. Time on your side is what makes the best investment decisions. The other point about the currency too is you need to look at your portfolio diversification. We had an interesting chat last week with a Australian expat overseas. He was quite proud. He was holding investments in Hong Kong dollars, in US dollars, and also Arab dirhams. Now, while it sounds great, what's the common factor amongst all those currencies? The US dollar. Once we pointed this out to him, he realised that it was 100% long the United States dollar, and if the US dollar is going up, then that's a fantastic thing. But if it falls, it'll certainly take a big bite out of his income and also to his investments. Making sure you're diversified across not only country but also currencies is an incredibly important part of managing expat finances. You need to make sure that you're holding a good basket of currencies, and also too, if you are planning on returning to Australia at some point in the near future, and in that we say 1 to 2 years, you need to start moving your funds across to the Australian dollar exposure sooner than later. There's no point in telling what the Australian dollar is going to be in 2 years' time, but by taking a dollar cost averaging approach in this, you'll get a better result in the long term. The second risk we see for Australian expats is in their place of work. It's been a rite of passage for Australian expats, mainly due to their heritage, that they've been able to assume British citizenship by virtue of either parents or grandparents and work overseas and use London as a launching pad to work throughout Europe. Now, with the UK leaving the Eurozone, that rite of passage may change, because certainly you may not see that portability of your working status across Europe if you are a British citizen. Certainly this is early days from when the Brexit vote was announced, and as more information comes to hand and we find out more information, we'll certainly pass it on to Australian expats. If you do have any questions, please feel free to email us at info@atlaswealth.com.au. You can also tweet us at #AskAtlasWealth. Take care and have a great day.